Let's get started. So we have a wonderful panel today and hopefully an interesting conversation. We'll start with Mike here to my immediate right. So Mike is an expert in cloud native strategy and messaging. His career has spanned companies big and small, from working and advising early stage startups to leading marketing and strategy for Cisco. Currently, Mike serves as the head of marketing for Portainer. Welcome, Mike. Mike Chenitz. So I should give you his last name as well. Next, we have Liran Cohen. Liran has been working with Linux systems for over 2 decades, holding critical positions in both public and private sectors. Liran has extensive experience with Linux, security, infrastructure, Kubernetes, among many other things, and spent much of his career helping companies adopt new technologies. Before Sosivio, he was the principal Kubernetes architect for Red Hat Israel in Europe, now the CTO and co-founder of Sosivio. Welcome, Liran. And to the right of Liran, we have Camille Rodriguez, the Cloud Field Engineering Manager at Canonical. So Camille designs and deploys private clouds for customers using technologies such as Kubernetes and OpenStack, Juju Charms, Mass, and other open source projects. She has previous experience working in a DevOps team for the largest telco in Canada, where she developed her troubleshooting skills and put out fires in production, probably many fires, some of them maybe you'll talk about today. She's also the president of the Women's Resource Group at Canonical. So welcome, Camille.
Thank you.
So we'll start just with, really quickly, if I can ask each of you to, in your own words, maybe 30 seconds to a minute, what do your companies do and related to this wonderful world of containers, cloud native, Kubernetes, and what we're here for this conference?
We'll
start with Mike.
Okay. All right, so yeah, I work for Portainer, and Portainer tries to simplify the Kubernetes experience, or actually I should say even the container experience. So for people just getting started within containers, we really want to make it so that we can distill down that experience and make sure that we really hit on how to deploy apps, how to manage resources, how to do all these things that it can be really hard and daunting. If you just look at the CNCF landscape, you can know how daunting that can be. So for people just trying to get into it, there's really not a lot of solutions that help, and that's what we try and do.
I work for Sosivio, obviously, and what we do is predictive troubleshooting. Basically, we're, again, making the Kubernetes experience more convenient to users, but from a little bit of a different perspective, not just management or not management, more of when you have a problem, you can see exactly what happened immediately, and you don't have to go and look around in logs and metrics and a lot of pieces of data just to understand what happened. Not only that, you don't need to wait for a failure. You can know when a failure is going to happen, because we do have a very powerful prediction engine.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, and I work for Canonical. So Canonical is the developer and distributor of Ubuntu, which is a Linux OS the most largely used for Kubernetes deployments and just in the Linux space in general. In the K space, we have 2 major distributions. So we do Charm Kubernetes, which is really focused for large-scale deployments, highly customizable, and really focused on having easy day 2 operations. And then on the small scale, if you want to deploy easily K on your laptop or on small clusters up to 20 nodes, we develop a macro case, which is super easy to deploy, and the goal with this one is to be like zero ops, everything automated and simple to use.
Awesome. So we'll start with a softball question, and we'll start all the way on the end and work back this way. So first, based on your interactions with customers, with partners, with people in the Kubernetes space, what do you think the biggest hurdles organizations face when making the jump to Kubernetes?
I think one of the hard things for companies who are looking at jumping to Kubernetes is, well, containerize your applications. I still talk to a lot of customers who are using, applications deployed on virtual machines or hardware, and they're wondering how to get to that place where you have everything containerized and microservices. So as the company has to decide which distribution to use, what tools to use, I think one of the things they can do to enable that change with their developers is to provide a sandbox environment. So macrocase would be like perfect for that if every developer can have a small case distribution that they can start playing with and start containerizing their environment and their applications too.
Liran?
So I come from a little bit of a different angle. I think education mainly, and understanding the environment you're going to run on, which is very different from VMs and servers. And everybody wants to have the promise of what Kubernetes can give you or provide to you, but the way to do it is understand the environment and not just copy from something you saw on the internet, right? And that's, I think, where the biggest problems occur. If you copy what someone else did for their application, it's probably not right for your application, let alone your environment. And then problem starts, and that's exactly where you need the visibility to understand what's going on. And without it, you're stuck with, which I love, a lot of command line tools.
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, to me, there's a couple problems. Well, the biggest thing is understand what you want to do first, because I think that a lot of, and this happened early on too. I mean, even when the cloud, and even before Kubernetes came around, they said, okay, well, we heard about this thing called the cloud. Let's get our applications up there. All right, we'll take our application over here. We're just going to put it up here. Okay, that's called a very expensive second data center, and that's not really what you want to do. So think about the reason why we created microservices, and when I say we, I'm not talking about me, but the industry as a whole. And the reason why we did that was because we wanted the flexibility of saying, hey, we don't want these monolithic applications, we don't want to take them and start to have to deploy on top of it and make these applications go down. So we split them up, made microservices, and that way we could just kind of inject these services over and over again. Now, the reason why I mention that is because it's what people don't think of the reasons why. And really when you're trying to digitize that application, you have to start to think about, why am I doing this? Do I need to do this, first of all? And if I'm going to do it, how am I going to break up this legacy app into these little things? And then think about all the ecosystem, which could be, again, very daunting. Because if you just walk into the to KubeCon here, how many different solutions are you going to see? And if you're just thinking about Kubernetes, you're thinking, okay, what's CSI? What's CNI? What proxy am I going to use? What's my network scheme? It could be so daunting. So really think about all these different options, why you're going to do it, and then think about how you're going to do it. Because there are other options besides Kubernetes. Everybody's talking about WebAssembly this week. I don't know why, but everybody's talking about WebAssembly. So there are other options. There's a lot of things going on. So make sure it's the right solution for your choice and for what you need. And that's really, I think, a lot of the problem.
Awesome. Cool. So
did I go over my 2 minutes?
No, that was excellent. So continuing on this path, we heard it from a few of you here. There's tons of companies in the space. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of choices. How do you view? We're obviously all on the provider side of things. How do you view working with partners and developing technologies together, or at least that work together, and how that's important for this ecosystem? And maybe you can share highlight some of the integrations and some of the partnerships that you find valuable with your companies. And also, full disclosure here, the three of us are all working together on several different projects, so maybe we can touch on a few of those as well. So, Liran, why don't you start this one?
Yeah, sure. So, Micro Kubernetes is something that we have an add-on now, and it's published and it's out there. I personally really like Micro Kubernetes because it was easy to install on my laptop, really fast, and it doesn't kill your laptop, right? You need half a core, half a gig, and you're running. It's really good for developers, but I found it also very useful up to 15, 20 nodes. Integration was very easy because it supports everything that Kubernetes does, except not using etcd, which is SQLite. And it's a very good platform for developers, for testing, for a lot of different use cases, even for production. Probably a lot of companies use it. Pertainer is actually a great management dashboard. One of the best ones that I've used, and my past, so I have used a couple. It's easy. It has a novel approach. It doesn't just show you what you would see in kubectl. It kind of aggregates and gives you different views. And our integration with Pertainer is actually augmenting a dashboard with a lot of insights and metrics that without Sosivio would be impossible to reach. But now when you have the dashboard to manage the environment and all the insights and metrics, you kind of have like a fuller solution. Same, by the way, with micro Kubernetes. You have an easy tool, and now you have a wrap to it.
Yeah, to add to it, I mean, I think it's very true. Like MicroK comes with, opinionated decisions about the CNI and a few things, but then you have all the list of add-ons. So Sosivio is one of them, and there's a lot of community add-ons, so people can write their own if they want, and have an easy way to one command deploy an application on top of MicroK. And to step back to the question about the partners, so at Canonical, we develop Ubuntu, so we have partners with a lot of different OEM, like hardware vendors, and alliances partners as well, to make sure that Ubuntu is optimized on all the platforms, on all the hardware, and even in public clouds, like we have partnerships with AWS, Azure, and GCP to make sure that there's specialized kernel in each of these environments. So make sure that the Ubuntu experience is as good as possible. And then having partners for Kubernetes specifically gives a lot of flexibility into what someone needs for their applications. A little bit of what you said earlier, there's so many options that you need to look at what your product needs to be successful and not just what other people are doing. So having that flexibility with partnerships really gives you that.
I think they covered the partnerships between like what we have and they have here. So I'm not going to really cover that much, but I think the importance really is in kind of combining these solutions together. Because as we said before, there are so many different solutions out there, and really what that's done to the ecosystem is it's fragmented a lot. And the other thing that it's done is it made it so that there's so many of these spot products, and you may get somebody in an organization that says, hey, I'm going to build my own solution of all these products. And then they're not thinking about, well, if I'm not here, who's the next one that's going to handle this?
Exactly.
And really what happens then if you don't have some kind of integration between these products is that you have to start to manage these. And you have to think about all the pipeline that you have to manage across that. So with having partnerships, a lot of times, and I'm not saying this is all the time, but sometimes you have partnerships in support. Sometimes you have partnerships in technologies. And if they integrate better, then you have to manage less. And it also makes it so there's usually some kind of intelligence between there that links things together. So you don't have to, the onus is not on you to figure out how to correlate all this stuff together. So I think that's a really important piece of these partnerships.
Just to add to it, it's not, you're completely right.
Yeah.
And what happens when you upgrade the piece,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
You need to have support from both sides.
Yeah, and it might break it if you don't have these partnerships, because they're certified. They figure out what works together, so you don't have to do all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a really important part.
I agree.
Awesome. Before I ask some more questions, I just want to check with the room. Anyone have any questions they want to throw at the panel here?
We don't bite. We're good.
Good job, Adam.
It means I'm doing an okay job. All right. So we'll keep moving here. All right. So we're going to step away from this part of the conversation to a different area here. Curious to hear everyone's take on this.
Yeah.
So open telemetry, a lot of companies are doing their own thing. A lot of companies are moving to kind of support this idea of open telemetry. What are your thoughts as a individual, as an organization, around this idea of collecting and using data and how you do that? And please elaborate your thoughts. Who wants to start?
I could start with that because I actually have a lot of my friends at Cisco are actually on the board for OpenTelemetry. They actually create a lot of the standards for OpenTelemetry and AppDynamics. So those two create a lot of that. So I think OpenTelemetry is great. I think there's a ways to go, and I think that some of the collaborations I heard today, that they're actually thinking about things around eBPF and how that could fit into it. They're not doing that yet. Don't quote me on that because there isn't that yet. But they're thinking about what is this data that we need? How do we need to get it? And how can we make it so that everybody can consume this in a standardized way? So I think it can only help. So as long as people can agree on what that data is, and that's a big if sometimes, then I think it could really only help.
Okay, so just to boil that down, because I know what Liron's going to say. The idea, you're for the idea.
I'm for the
but
idea.
We still have a ways to get there
I
and
think
agree
so.
on how we do it. Okay.
Yes.
All right, go ahead. Leo.
So, by the way, I love the idea of open telemetry and the standardization of,
Yeah.
gathering data. I have a couple of issues with the generic concept of injecting a library into a developer's code, which can and does cause a lot of problems once you start having bugs and problems in the production. You come to the developer, they're going to say, it's not me, I tested my app, probably something from the library that is not working. Maybe it's an interaction, maybe there's a bug in the library, maybe it's not the same version.
Yeah.
But that's just part of the story. The second part, I think the bigger part, is the developer education. You now have to go developer by developer and explain how to work, even though you have a library and you have to put it just into your code. You still need to extract information, which is awesome if you want to see specific data about your application. But when you're looking platform-wide, you have a production cluster, it's not feasible to collect all the information. Same goes for eBPF. It's awesome when you want to see something specific. It's very good, easy to get. But what happens when you have 100,000 pieces of metrics that you need to get from a node?
Sure.
You're just getting the net. So it's a nice addition to tools, but it cannot be the only solution.
I would just make one comment on that, and that is that not everybody is doing what you guys are doing. Some people need low speed, low frequency. It's not all high speed.
In addition, you have to have
Yeah.
that information in addition to
Sure.
like the basic.
Yeah.
I'm on the side that vendor agnostic telemetry is the way forward. That's the way we do it at Canonical. We try to take from the biggest open source projects and see, what are the standards that are being put out there, and like for example, like Prometheus, Jagger, Grafana, they're really huge projects that have a big impact on the decisions being made in open telemetry, for example. So as long as there's a good integration with the different applications, and be able to extract your data is quite essential if you want to run in production. Like when you have an issue and you're not able to pinpoint where it comes from, it can cost you a lot.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask one more question. I'm conscious of the time here. I want to make sure everyone can get to the keynotes that are going to start in about 20 minutes. There's a lot of organizations that we run into that are just dipping their toes into Kubernetes. They understand the value that it can bring. They know that they want to get there. Some it's going to take 2-3 years. Some it's going to take 10 years. What is one or two pieces of advice for people and organizations who are just getting started on their Kubernetes journey in order to future-proof? How can they be successful? And one or two things, this is what I want to leave you with.
I can start.
Okay.
I think one of the things, when you mentioned, you walk into KubeCon and there's just so many options. Well, when you try to decide what to go with, look at the community support. Like, is it well adopted? Is there a lot of commits every day? Is it a very active project? And also on the commercial side, like, will you get the support you need? Because depending on your project, you may need only community support, but you may need commercial support. And evaluating that can really change, with your decision. And don't forget about day two operations. A lot of people focus on how do I get my app out there, and you don't think about how you're going to operate it, upgrade it, manage it. And I've been there. We didn't have time to talk about fires in production, but this is like a huge piece of how to be successful. So really look at that.
Iran?
So I would go with, first of all, continuing the developer education and DevOps person education. Understand what you need. Don't just go shopping from CNCF or any other open source project and just adding whatever layers of complexity just because everybody uses it. It slows you down. It probably will set you up for failure. Just understand the platform, understand what you can get really quick, start working, and then add to it gradually. Of course, make sure that what you choose is stable, reliable, etc. But don't just put open source projects because they're open source projects and everybody uses them.
Yeah, I would say first understand what you need to do with your application, what your application needs are. I think that's the first thing. And then back into the technology stack. I think there's a lot of people that just bring up a Kubernetes cluster, don't even think about the network, don't even think about there's a lot of things to think about. And take your time to think about it. It's not a rush. It's not, really think about what people are doing that have deployed these applications of your scale, and start to read about those things. And education is key. I'm really keen on that too. So I think those are the big things. I think we've talked about pretty much everything else. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I lied about last question because we do have 3 more minutes.
Okay.
you guys answered quicker than I thought.
Oh, you put us in a rush.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so last one. Yeah, but Liron talks likes to explain, so I want to give him time.
See that?
You're on my team. I can blame you. Okay, so last question here, because I did want to get in fires in production. Maybe a quick. I'm seeing your face, Camila. Maybe a quick story about something that you've experienced. We've all seen this on some of our customers, and fires in production sometimes are catastrophic to the organization. I mean, costing millions and millions of dollars, costing bad user experience, sometimes in like the most important day of the year for the company. So what are some maybe that you've seen, and maybe ways that companies can avoid those same catastrophes?
That's a good question.
You can also pass.
I can say one. It wasn't with Kubernetes specifically. When I worked at Telco, it was with OpenStack, but similar cloud deployment, and they had made a decision before I joined that they developed their own deployer and Ansible base, and later on, OpenStack Ansible became really, really big, but they didn't switch to it just yet. So developing your own tool can come with some complexities, like having to upgrade. You have to write your own upgrade path, and there was a lot of custom things being made, and that relates a little bit to what you said on like the first question. If there's a lot of custom things that you develop, you think it's the greatest idea in the world, and then someone leaves the company 3 years later and you don't know how to upgrade the code, like it can bring, it can be really difficult. So upgrade paths sometimes took like 6 months over the 10 data centers just because it was such a nightmare. I'll go into more details. It's one of the things.
Yeah, so I have a list.
Don't say any customer names.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They just used to call me whenever there was not a fire, but a forest fire. So I can give a list, a very long one, but the most extreme ones that I've experienced are also the most frustrating ones, because once you find the problem, it's so frustrating that you didn't even notice that it was there. From a Kubernetes cluster that has different kubelet versions on different nodes, or different kernel version, and the binary has an opcode that doesn't run on that specific kernel, and then you have a crash. And until configuration of node anti-affinity or affinity or high CPU requests that just doesn't deploy new versions, like there's a lot of things. Eventually it comes down to a simple, a little bit of higher attention, and of course, if you would be able to be aware of what is going to go wrong, that could save a lot of pain and flights.
Do you know any products that can?
Yeah.
Kidding. All right, Mike, go ahead.
It's been a while for me because I've been in product for a long time now, so I really haven't been dealing with that side of it in a while. So I probably don't have anything that's top of mind for me.
Awesome. Well, that's good because we're out of time.
See?
Now?
That
No
was
more
like-
questions?
No more questions. That's it. So I want to thank the panel here today for joining us. Appreciate your time and your thoughts on these matters. And all 3 of you are going to be around all week, so I encourage everyone here to come chat with them and ask your own questions and come visit our booths. And we'll be here tomorrow, same time. Please spread the word. And tomorrow we have Scott, who's in the audience, going to be speaking with us. Yeah, where is he? The guy looking behind him is the guy. So come and join us tomorrow, and thank you all for coming and enjoy the conference. So
Thank you.
Thank you.